Welcome to the Invest This podcast, where the secrets for real estate investing are revealed. Now, here's your host, Scott Bauer.
And welcome everybody to the 25th episode of the Invest This podcast. I am your host, Scott Bauer, and today, blessed to have Kent Clothier on today. Kent, how you doing?
What's going on, big guy? How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Kent is the founder of Real Estate Worldwide, good friend, mentor of mine, somebody I've been connected to for the last few years and really helped me up my game. So glad to have him on the show. Kent, why don't you go ahead and give the listeners a little bit more about your background and what you're focused on now?
Yeah, so we've been buying and selling now, my family and I, for the last, I guess since 2003. Our organization, Memphis Invest, has bought and sold over 5,000 properties now. So we have a nice turnkey operation based out of Memphis and Dallas and Houston and now into many other cities at this point. We also got our real estate education company that I run called Real Estate Worldwide, which now has roughly about 60,000 students around the world as well, teaching them how to wholesale, teaching them how to use data and create leads for their business and ultimately make a big profit out there. So what we're focused on, what are we focused on, man? We've always got something going on. We're focused on, trying to help as many people as we can. I mean, and I know that sounds kind of a little ambiguous, but that's kind of what we're all about here. We're really focused on trying to make it really, really simple for people to be successful in this business. In a business where there's a lot of money made in making it seem hard, whether it's our academy or whether it is our software or whatever the case may be, we're just trying to make it as easy as we can for people to get results. So I would say that's probably our primary focus and has been for a while now.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. I think it's fair that we back up a little bit for you. So why don't you give the listeners and everybody included here where you got started, because I know this is a long road that, it takes to get where you're at now. I mean, to have 5,000 properties that you manage and over 60,000 students out there, you don't go from that zero to that overnight. So, how do we get there? How'd you get there?
Yeah. So I started in business when I was 17. So 30 years ago, I started buying and selling groceries in what's called, a business called arbitrage. I was buying groceries at a discount in one market, and then I would go and flip them into another market. Never manufactured one thing. I was just a guy that was making money on the spread. So I'd find, Fiji water, if you will, right? And basically I had to go find a truckload of it in St. Petersburg, Florida, and I would buy it and I would turn around and go find some retailer out there where we could sell it for big profit. And the reason why the retailer would buy it from us is because they had to have it anyway, right? It's a staple item. It's in their store every single day. So if they could save a few bucks on a case of water times 5,000 cases that are on a truck, I mean, suddenly that was real money, right? $20,000 that they were saving. So that little business turned into a really big business. And so by the time I was 30, it had turned into a multi-billion-dollar business. But, as fate would have it, I was one of those guys that I was really successful at a really young age. I was completely full of crap. Everybody, I was one of those guys that all of our success was because of me, and all you had to do was ask me. So I would be more than willing to tell you that. And so because of that, as fate would have it, there was another plan. And the plan was that I was going to be hitting the reset button a lot sooner than I thought I was. And I basically ran out of my company March 14th of 2000. By December of 2002, I was completely wiped out. And that ultimately put me in a place where was just humble enough over a 2-year period to get involved in real estate. And when you're broke and busted and don't have any money and can't do anything and don't have any way of paying the bills, you'll figure out what you need to do. So I was backed into a corner and saw one of those late night infomercials and went down and checked it out. And before you knew it, was paying $1,000 for a course, $1,000 I didn't have. And the rest is kind of history. That was the first of many, many steps, but that was January of 2003. I bought my first wholesaling course, closed on my first deal January 22nd of 2003. And we'll never forget it. Made $8,200 on it.
So I mean, to kind of back up and really think about this, 2000, you were ran out of the company, this multi-billion-dollar company that you were the head of, that was all about you, right?
Yep.
And that was that the start of reverse wholesaling? I mean, whose course was this that you bought?
Well, reverse wholesaling was a concept that I had come up with in the grocery business.
Right.
So what had happened was, I was a kid. I was my company in Memphis, our company had been purchased. I was 25 or 26 when that happened. And then they asked me, I was in Memphis, Tennessee, running a $50 million a year company. It had just been purchased by a much bigger organization down in Boca Raton, Florida. And so they asked me to move to Boca Raton, Florida. So I moved down there, and the whole reason they wanted me to move down there is they wanted what I had been able to do in Memphis. They wanted me to do it down with their larger organization. And so, they kind of threw me the keys to the place and said, hey, just do what you do. Well, what I had been successful doing was, I believe, was very common sense. But, it's shocking how uncommon common sense really is. And so I just didn't know any better. I basically walked into a really big company that was doing hundreds of millions of dollars and said, why don't we just stop doing it the way you're doing it and do it my way? And my way is, why don't we just go ask every single one of our customers what they want to buy? Go ask them how much they want to spend, when they want us to deliver it, how much of it they want us to deliver, and basically ask very common sense questions. And the thought process was, if I know this information, then I can go and create the inventory. I can go and create the opportunities versus waiting for the opportunity to land in my lap and then go trying and hustle like everybody else does and sell it. And so that little epiphany, if you will, created this empire in the grocery side of it. And it exploded down there just like it did in Memphis. And when I took over that operation, it was doing $800 million a year. 30 months later, it was doing $1.8 billion. By using reverse wholesaling. So fast forward a few years, when I'm in the real estate space and I'm wholesaling houses, again, kind of epiphany struck. And it was that I'm doing the exact same process I was doing in groceries. I'm waiting for an opportunity to land in my lap, and then I'm running up and down the streets trying to find somebody to buy it from me. And that's what everybody else does. And I've just always believed that if you do what everybody else does, there's nothing that's separating you. You're not going to get any different results. There's nothing. Your greatness will always be on the horizon and will never be in your backyard. And so I just didn't want to be like that. And so I basically started applying what I knew worked, and I started applying it in real estate. And before you know it, our real estate business exploded as well. And it just worked again. So here were 3 scenarios where it worked. And as fate would have it, no sooner had we done it, and the philosophy was, let's just go talk to all the cash buyers in the market, find out what they want to buy, how much of it they want to buy, what's the price they want to pay, what neighborhoods they want it to be in, get all their questions, and then just go really focus our marketing on creating opportunities that would fit into that box if we wanted to. And as, again, fate would have it, almost within 24 months, the banks were shutting down. The recession had happened. And so we were in the perfect place at the perfect time. We had all the cash buyers and we owned them. We already had all the chips. So while all of our competitors went out of business, our business just kept taking off. And that's kind of that's how we landed in the education and the software spaces, because once everybody saw what we were doing, they were like, man, show me how.
So, I mean, you can do this in everything, right? It's not just the grocery business. It's not just real estate. You could really do this everywhere. But since you kind of, when you brought that concept even to the grocery business, did this take off in other areas for grocery or?
Well, I apply it to everything in my life. Now.
Right.
So I can tell you that I don't see much point in wasting time on anything. So starting with the end in mind and what the ideal outcome is first, and then working backwards to figure out what the steps are to make that happen is a really, really smart way to do just about anything, right?
Yep.
What are you trying to achieve? And then what are the steps that you have to go through to get to that? And you'd be shocked at how many people go through the steps without actually sitting down and saying, this is what I'm really trying to achieve. This is what it really looks like. It happens every day.
So I'm reading a book right now called The E-Myth. You know about the E-Myth?
Of course, Michael Gerber.
Yep. Okay. So there's 3 different things that every entrepreneur has, right? The entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician.
Yep.
So would you say that most people go through life as a technician and not an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. That's the whole point of the book.
Right.
That's what people do. They believe, that's why it's the myth. They believe they are an entrepreneur when the reality is all they have done is back themselves into another job.
Yep.
Right. They don't own anything except a job.
Yep. Right. So, I mean, even there's so much that goes into building up a business and basically taking it from. So when you got started with even the reverse wholesaling or learning how to do it with real estate and getting into the education, how did you go from, where did you start at to get to on the education side to really show people that, if you're talking about the end in mind, where was the end? Where did you think it was going to go? Did you ever envision yourself being as big as you are now?
No. I never, I do now. Now I think we're too small, but I've always, I guess probably, it's a good question. I guess probably the way that came about specifically, is that when you do, in the face of mediocrity, common sense and just good sound business looks extraordinary. Right. And so what I've come to appreciate is that the world is just filled with mediocrity. It's just everywhere, business and otherwise. And so to me, what's felt like common sense and felt like just the right way to do something seemed extraordinary to people around me that I respected. And so they were the ones that recognized and said, listen, you are the one, you have an opportunity here. You have the chance to actually show people something that they've never seen before. Because before we were talking about cash buyers, there were no cash buyers. There wasn't something that today we hear a term like cash buyer list. Oh yeah, you just go get a cash buyer list. Well, that did not exist. We are literally the company that invented that, right? And so none of that was around. And so going and finding a vacant property list, that did not exist. We created that. But the point being is that when you're kind of in it, it just feels very natural. It's when everybody else recognizes, says, man, you have to allow other people to get to it. And they kind of forced us and pushed me up and said, you're worth, what you're doing is worth noting. But we still kind of went a little kicking and screaming because I value my free time immensely. I value my family immensely. I value what the systems and processes we have built in the company and my family and our organization. And so I didn't really want to get distracted. I didn't want any part of that, regardless of the money. And then I had a mentor make a really interesting comment to me. He's like, I just want you to realize that if you don't do this, you are quite literally dooming the rest of the industry, all the entrepreneurs out there. And I didn't really understand what he was saying. He's like, because if you don't give them the opportunity to connect with somebody like you that actually is doing it every day, that has proven it, that knows what it's done, that has built 10 multi-million-dollar companies. If you don't give them that chance, then you have doomed them to be hooking up and being connected with people that are a fraction of what you are and a fraction of the organization you are. And that really, really meant something to me. And so that's kind of was that final push that we needed. All right, so now if we're going to do this and we're going to do it well, what is it going to look like? Mm-hmm. And so that's when that conversation of, all right, let's start with the end in mind. Now let's sit down, let's map it out. What do we want to be when we grow up? How many people do we want to talk to? What do we want our audience to look like? Who makes for a great customer? Who makes for a bad customer? All that kind of stuff. And then started working backwards from there.
So the listeners that are listening to this podcast are everybody from commercial investors to single family investors, multifamily investors, and people like that. So primarily we're talking about single family. That's what, our business, that's how I met you. That's what the reverse wholesaling that you teach talks about, finding cash buyers, but you can do that with anything, right?
Of course. Yeah.
How long, once you made that decision where you said, okay, I have to go find as many people as I can, and I want to touch as many people and show people the right way, as many as I can. How long did it take for you to get from that point of decision to, okay, now we have traction? if that makes sense. 2003, I guess you said you.
So I got in the education space in 2009, and
Okay.
so 2008. From 2008, I want to say it's 2008 to 2013, or 2008 to 2012. It basically took us that long before we were selling $10 million a year, right?
Okay.
Our first year, I think we sold $200,000. And then we just kind of steadily built, and there was many years where we kind of plateaued in there. The point being is that it was never about that. I will tell you that none of the goals ever were set out where we said we wanted to create this amount of money in the business.
Yeah.
It was about, this is what we want our audience to look like. This is who we want to talk to. This is how many of those people we want to talk to. This is what we're willing to pay to acquire them. Here's what we believe the revenue will be. But it was never about that. It was always more about, and I can honestly say this, is that creating a business that afforded us the opportunity to talk to as many people as we could, help as many people as we could, but do it under our terms, meaning that it was never a sacrifice. For years, the first few years, I was having to go off and I got really good at going out and speaking and helping people and going on stage and doing all that kind of stuff. And I quickly, after a couple of years, figured out that, oh my God, I'm sacrificing. One of the core things I wanted to do is make sure I'm spending all the time with my family. And here I am sacrificing something I'm unwilling, but I'm doing this, right? Because I'm chasing money. And so quickly we pivoted back and said, okay, keep us in the lanes. So again, that's the value of knowing exactly what you want, and what you're willing to do for it and not do for it. We've had many opportunities to turn this into, a much larger organization than it is today. The reality of it would come at a price that we're just not willing to pay today, right? And now, starting with the end in mind means you're constantly evolving as a person too. So as different opportunities come your way, you can easily change and pivot and make different decisions, but you're making those decisions in an intentional way.
Well, the reason I really asked you that question is because I think that for a lot of people out there, this word perseverance and, not ever letting go or never giving up, because it's an important, very important piece, right? You didn't get to where you're at now because, you had this end in mind from the get-go, and nothing has come as a roadblock in between then and now. But instead, when roadblocks came up or there were little bumps in the road or whatever it might be, you persevered through them, right? And you changed directions and you pivoted, like you said. And so for a lot of the listeners that are trying to, get into larger investments or buy more properties or, acquire more, whatever it is, perseverance is the number one thing I think that a lot of people out there lack, because when things get hard, it's super easy to just give up.
Well, we talk about this, in our group, right? In our billionaire boardroom group. And it's interesting that when you get around some of the biggest investors out there, guys that are doing, lots of transactions, lots of deals, making, tens of millions of dollars, things are going, and to your point, there's still a challenge out there. It might be a little different, but the challenge is still out there. Is how do you deal with these moments like this when you definitely feel like you're in over your head and you want to give up, or not even give up, but just give in. Like something's, I'm not there right now. And I will tell you, and I've shared this with that same group, that the conversation that goes in my head in those moments that I think is important, or I've been told many, many times now that this has really helped a lot of people, is really when I find myself in those moments, I'm having one conversation, and the conversation goes something along the lines of, this is where my competition will quit. And so, any of your people that are listening out there and your listeners that they're thinking about these big deals and they're coming up, there's some challenge, right, that you're talking about, hey, they need to persevere through. The real conversation should be, what's the alternative, right? You can go backwards. You can be just like everybody else that stops right here. You're going to be defined by that moment one way or the other. And either you can be defined by it as, this is the moment that broke me and I quit, or this is the moment where I figured out how to keep moving because everybody else was willing to quit. And I believe the more times you land on the other side of that conversation and you keep just pushing, and I'm not even talking about pushing hard, I'm just about take one step further than your competition, I think you'll find that you more times than not, you win.
Right. And and that's huge. For a lot of the listeners out there, it's hard sometimes to do that, right? To be crystal clear. Another to your point about going to the end for the end in mind, becoming crystal clear on what it is that you do want, because in this business, there's so many different ways where you can make money. You can have a great life. You can live a great life using so many different techniques, right? And so becoming crystal clear on what the technique that you're, I guess, chasing after is, and making sure that it's not about money is probably one of the largest things that you could focus on. And with the world that we live in, right? So the US, everything's about money. Everything is about money in every aspect that we look at. So it's hard to, I'm sorry, that's the wrong word. It can be difficult to not focus on the money. You talk about what your purpose is, what you're doing this for. And if it's not, of course, a piece of it is for money, right? Because you have to live. But if that's not your sole purpose, then I think you're going to go farther, which is exactly what you're showing. So, I mean, can you tell the listeners, can you break down where real estate worldwide is now, compare, or what the next 5 years is going to look like?
I mean, our vision is we continue to see ourselves and view ourselves as an industry leader, pioneer. Our mission clearly states is that we're here to wake people up, to help them understand what's really possible. To the point you were just making, and that we've seen time and time again over the years, after tens of thousands of people have passed through our systems and processes and everything else, one thing's very, very evident. Most people are out there chasing money. And here's one thing I know to be very true. When you chase money, money runs.
Right.
And it is much better to put yourself in a situation to where you attract money. And I know that sounds, for people that aren't really on the inside, that sounds kind of crazy. But if you're on the inside, you just know it's true. Meaning that you have the systems, you have the processes, you have the marketing, you have the energy and the drive, and you're moving in an intentional way to where you're just constantly putting yourself in a situation to where the opportunities are coming your way. And that's what I mean by attracting money. When you're focused on where you're going to get that next $1,000, that $1,000 can become very, very elusive. And so we are focused on helping people understand what the possibilities really are, and breaking down the walls, breaking down the barriers, waking them up, challenging them, pushing them harder than they've ever been pushed, and giving them all of the tools that they need to be successful. So whether that is education, whether that is the actual lead generation, whether that is actual funding, it doesn't matter, right? Whatever it is, we as a company are committed to being a part of breaking down those walls for people. And so our roadmap is, we have our software continues to be, the industry leader out there when it comes to generating these leads for cash buyers and private lenders and motivated sellers. And we take that very, very seriously. We battle, we think about it every day that somebody's trying to take us out. And so we would just want to continue to evolve and be the very best at providing that data to our clients. And we do that throughout all of our companies, whether it's that, or whether it's Memphis Invest and buying and selling turnkey houses and investments, or whether that's the Academy, or whether that's Boardroom. It really doesn't matter. There's one mission: just be the best.
How you do one thing is how you do everything, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Well, hey man, we could talk probably all day long. I was just in your office, 2 weeks ago. It was a great time, and we could talk all day. But for sake of time, let's go into our lightning round. How about that?
Sure, let's do it, man. What you got?
Okay. What is your hashtag invest this tip to keep our listeners moving forward? Number one, gotta say one thing.
One thing to keep moving forward. Focus on the opportunity. Don't ever focus on the obstacle. You're always going to be faced with some little challenge, whether it's on a daily thing. If you want to figure out how to get over the humps on a consistent basis, figure out which one you're focused on. Are you focused on the obstacle? You're focused on the opportunity. You focus on the opportunity, you'll get through it.
Focus. So yeah, great tip. Appreciate that. I think it's the same thing as focus on where you're going. Look down the road. Don't look behind you. Look down the road. Right.
Well, it's real easy to figure out all the reasons why something won't work.
Right.
That's what broke people do. Right. Don't do that.
Yep.
Focus on what the big win is here. Hey, this is how I'm going to set my life up. I'm going to set my my family up. Here's how I'm going to create impact in the world. This is what I'm doing. That's the opportunity that a business like this does for you. But if you're so focused on, well, I'm trying to figure out how to get 500 mail pieces out the door, and you're getting all caught up in all that, you will quickly figure out why not to do something that could just be the one thing you need to do.
Right. Appreciate that tip. Do you have a favorite book that you've ever read, and what's the impact been?
Yeah, absolutely. The book is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I recommend it all the time. And the impact, it's single-handedly the most impactful book I've ever read, right?
I've never read it, so I'm going to read it.
Probably read it in less than an hour. And it is, I think it's one of the top 5 selling books in the world all time, something like that. I mean, it is a remarkable book, short read that you'll probably end up reading, a dozen times like me. And it just goes to show how much of the world is controlled by what's going on in between our ears. It's a fable, but it's a great book. It's not your normal self-help book. You're just going to walk around. You're going to walk out when you get done, and it'll go all the way to the very last page. And then all of a sudden you're going to be like, wow, now I get it.
Well, when I read it, I'll let you know. I appreciate you sharing that book.
Yeah.
Who has given you the best advice, and what type of impact did that have on your life? It's a big question.
Probably best advice is from my father. And he would, my father was extremely difficult on us growing up. But he raised us, in an entrepreneurial family, and ultimately that worked out very well for all me and my brothers and everybody, right? We built a big business and multiple big businesses in multiple different industries. And a lot of that comes right back to him and what he taught us from the very beginning. And he was, and being very strict on us, he had one thing he said to us pretty much constantly: as good isn't good when great is expected. And it always, I never stopped thinking that. And so the moment I believe that I am good enough is the moment that my decline has begun.
That's huge, man. Good isn't good when great is expected. That's on point. Appreciate you sharing that.
Of course.
And how do you like to give back? Obviously, you have a massive organization that gives back in so many different ways, but what's your favorite way to give?
We have 2 primary ways we give back. We have a promotion that we run every year, half of the last few years, around in between Thanksgiving and the second week of December. It's called 1,000 Layaways, where we go and walk into stores, find out when the store's layaways are actually going to expire. And what that means, for those that don't know what that means, is that when families in need go in and put their children's toys for Christmas on layaway, about 2 weeks before the holiday, the stores will actually expire the layaways. They'll just simply call the customer and say, listen, we've been holding this as long as we can for you. We're not going to hold it anymore. We're giving you all your money back, but the toys are going back on the shelf because we want to sell them before Christmas. And so you can imagine it's, you've got a struggling mother or father, couple, whatever, that are out there trying to get their layaways paid off, scraping together. And so here we are, we find out those dates, and we come in on that day completely anonymously. People don't know what's happening, and pay off the entire store. And in a lot of cases, pay off multiple stores. And so every layaway that's on the shelf is paid anonymously. And then the store picks up the phone and calls them. And instead of getting a phone call saying you just lost your layaway, they get a phone call saying your layaway was just paid off by somebody anonymously as a gift. It creates massive impact. And it's exactly what I believe having good fortune is all about. And so over the last few years, I started this as a way to show my kids who are privileged what the holiday is really about. And then I shared it with our community. And over the last 5 years, it's grown to a point where I think last year, the hashtag was used almost 75,000 times by our community. Somebody going out there and paying off a layaway. The average layaway payoff was $100. So you could easily, figure out that roughly $7.5 million dollars were spent on paying off layaways last year, and a very, very cool little thing there that just started, that went viral. The second thing we've done is, as you know, through our boardroom organization, we have dedicated ourselves to building a village in Haiti through our Real Estate Worldwide community, raising $250,000 in building that community for 50 families there. I went to Haiti back in 2012. It had a very, very profound effect on my life. Made me truly appreciate what life's all about. And it's not about any of this first world nonsense that you and I are dealing with, right? This is all games, even what we're doing right now. I think about, we get to hang out with our friends and get on a video and talk and do a podcast and chit chat and make good money. And man, there's so many people that would change places with us in a second on our very worst day. You take your worst day you've ever had in the history of your life, and there are people that would trade and I know you've had some bad ones, brother. And they would trade places with you in a second, right? That's their best day. And that's very humbling to see that and to understand that. And so when I got to see that firsthand, and I got to meet those children down there, to know that we could go down there and build for $250,000, we could build, an entire village, sustainable village with a well, with a school, with a community center, everything for 50 families and take care of 400 people. I mean, we're in, right? So that's the kind of stuff that we like to do.
Yeah, that's huge. That's massive. That's not even, that's massive. So how can the listeners reach you if they want to find out more about Real Estate Worldwide? They want to learn, about Kent Clothier, about how to give money to help this foundation with building.
Yeah, probably the easiest way to find me and then kind of start that connection is I have my Facebook fan page, which is just Kent Clothier on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, easy to find there. Just hit me up, connect with me there, direct message me. I'd be glad to connect with you and start pointing you in directions. Or you can just go to kentclothier.com. One of those three ways, and I'll be the traffic coordinator, right? Push you anywhere you want to go.
Awesome. Well, hey, man, we'll make sure to put that in the show notes. And, I appreciate you sharing all the information today. It's huge to go from, it's crazy to go from the grocery business to being completely broken out of money to then figuring out, okay, this is what worked in grocery. Let's try in real estate now. And then watching it work and realizing that you could actually be the person to change millions potentially of people's lives. So you've now built this organization, and that your whole goal is to touch as many people as possible, including myself. I mean, it's been a great run so far, and we're just getting started, right? So,
love it, brother.
I appreciate you being here today, sharing all the information, and we will talk with you real soon.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Make sure to like, subscribe, and share this podcast to help us spread the word. Go ahead and reach out to Scott Bauer on all the social media outlets for suggestions on topics and guests for the show. And check out investthispodcast.com for more secrets and resources to achieve real success in real estate.